Welcome to our channel. Today we're diving into a brand new bedtime story series that will whisk you away to a world of magic and mystery. Sit back, relax, and let your imagination bloom as we explore enchanted gardens and hidden realms. Don't
forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell to stay updated with our magical adventures. Now, let's begin our journey into the magical garden. In the heart of Elderwood, a quaint village woven with cobblestone paths and surrounded by the whispering ancient woods, there lies a garden. This isn't just any garden. Hidden from the prying eyes of tourists and tucked away behind the old mill, it has been a secret of the village for generations. Overgrown with ivy and wildflowers, the garden gates are barely visible among the thick greenery that whispers of old magic and untold stories. In this village lives a child named Oliver, with hair as wild as the woodland brambles and eyes bright. With the spark of curiosity, Oliver is no stranger to adventures. Unlike other children in the village who prefer the playgrounds and paved streets, Oliver is drawn to the mysteries of nature. He spends his days exploring the woods, listening to the tales of the wind, and learning the patterns of the stars. Oliver had always felt a peculiar pull towards the old garden. Maybe it was the way the wind seemed to call his name whenever he passed by, or how the birds circled above it as if guarding a treasure. His heart thrummed with the promise of adventure as he stood before the weathered gate, which looked more like part of the forest than a barrier meant to keep the world out. Today, he thought, he would finally see what secrets lay hidden beyond those gates. Little did Oliver know, his life was about to change forever as he stepped into a world where the ordinary became extraordinary, and every leaf and stone held a story waiting to be told. After what seemed like hours of playing hide-and-seek alone, Oliver found himself at the far end of the overgrown garden. The other children had long since retreated to their homes for supper, leaving him alone with his thoughts and the rustling of the leaves. As he pushed through a particularly thick bush, he stumbled upon something unexpected. There, concealed by layers of ivy and the arms of ancient trees, was a gate. It was tall and wrought with iron, twisted and ornate, covered in a tapestry of moss and vines. Oliver's heart skipped a beat. How had he never noticed this part of the garden before? His hands trembled slightly as he reached out to touch the cold metal bars. The ivy felt alive, pulsing with a strange warmth as if it was breathing. With a cautious push, the gate creaked open, protesting with the weight of unspoken years. Oliver peered inside, his eyes adjusting to what lay beyond. The world on the other side was unlike anything Oliver had ever seen. It was as if he had stepped into a painting where the colors vibrated with an ethereal glow. The trees were taller, their trunks wide and welcoming, adorned with flowers that shimmered in hues of sapphire and silver under a sky that was a twilight tapestry. Glowing orbs floated gently in the air, casting soft lights over a pathway lined with crystals that tinkled like laughter with each gust of wind. As Oliver walked forward, his senses were overwhelmed by the fragrances of blooming jasmine and wild peppermint that seemed to cleanse the very essence of the air. The sound of a stream singing merrily to itself invited him deeper into this enchanting realm. Every step revealed wonders. A bush of roses that whispered sweet nothings when brushed against, stones that warmed underfoot, beckoning him to tread, without fear. Suddenly, from a thicket of moonflowers emerged a creature Oliver had only heard of in his grandpa's tales. A small, delicate fairy with wings that glittered like dewdrops in the morning sun. Her eyes were like polished emeralds, and her smile held the mystery of the ages. "Welcome, Oliver," she said, her voice a melody that seemed to dance with the wind. "You have found the enchanted garden of Elderwood, a place of magic and ancient power. This garden thrives on the joy and wonder of its visitors, especially those who believe in the magic of the world." Oliver, filled with awe and a pinch of disbelief, managed a shy smile. "Why can no one else see this place?" he asked, looking back towards the gate that now appeared just like part of the ordinary garden. "The garden is visible only to those who seek it truly. Those whose hearts are ready to embrace the mysteries of the world," the fairy explained, floating closer. "But with great beauty comes great responsibility. This garden needs a guardian to protect its magic from fading into the shadows of forgotten time. Are you ready to embark on an adventure, Oliver?" Without a second thought, filled with excitement and curiosity, Oliver nodded. He was ready to explore further, to learn, and to protect this hidden world he had always dreamed existed. Little did he know, his adventures were just beginning, and this garden was about to reveal secrets that would change his life forever. As Oliver followed the fairy deeper into the garden, the scenery around him blossomed into an orchestra of nature's symphony. The air buzzed with the gentle hum of magic, and every leaf and twig seemed imbued with life. The fairy, noticing Oliver's wide-eyed wonder, smiled warmly. "You are about to meet some of the oldest guardians of this garden," she said, guiding him towards a grand oak tree at the heart of the garden. Its massive trunk twisted skyward, branches sprawling, like the arms of a giant, leaves shimmering with a golden glow. "This is Eldrin, the wise oak," the fairy introduced. The tree's bark creaked and groaned, and then, astonishingly, it began to form a face. "Welcome, young one," the oak boomed in a deep, resonant voice that seemed as old as time itself. "I have seen many seasons, but it is always a joy to meet a new guardian." Oliver, a little taken aback, managed a small wave. "Hello, Eldrin, it's nice to meet you." Eldrin laughed, a sound like wind rustling through dry leaves. "And it is good to meet one so polite. Our garden thrives on the joy and wonder of its visitors, particularly the young for whom the magic of the world is still a fresh and wondrous thing." As they spoke, a rustling in the underbrush drew Oliver's attention. From among the ferns, a cluster of foxgloves appeared, but these were no ordinary flowers. They had faces, and they were talking to each other in hushed, melodious tones. "Oh, are those talking flowers?" Oliver asked, his curiosity piqued. "Yes, they are the foxglove folk," the fairy explained. "Each one houses a tiny spirit of the garden. They are quite playful and mischievous." One of the foxgloves, bolder than the rest, hopped forward. "Hello, I'm Flix," it said in a chirpy voice. "You're the new guardian, aren't you? We've been ever so excited to meet you." Before Oliver could respond, a chorus of greetings erupted from the other foxgloves, each introducing themselves in cheerful voices. The garden was alive in a way Oliver had never imagined possible. It was not just a garden, but a community, a family of creatures bound by magic and nature. As the sun began to dip lower in the sky, casting a golden hue over the garden, the fairy suggested they continue walking. "There is much to see and learn, Oliver. Each part of this garden holds its own magic, its own story." They wandered through a grove where the shadows played tricks, making you feel as if you were both lost and exactly where you needed to be. The fairy pointed out various plants and their guardians: a lavender bush that could induce calm with a single breath, a patch of nettles that could tell the most captivating tales if you dared to get close enough. "Why does this garden need a guardian?" Oliver finally asked, his mind buzzing with all he had seen. "The garden is not just a place of beauty and magic. It is a beacon of joy and imagination in the world," Eldrin answered, his voice echoing around them. "But with power comes danger. There are those who would seek to harness it for themselves, or worse, destroy it out of fear or greed." The gravity of his role began to dawn on Oliver. He was not just an observer, he was a protector. "That's why we need you, Oliver," the fairy said softly. "The magic of the garden is strongest when it is cared for by someone with a true and pure heart. Someone who can believe in the impossible and fight to preserve it." As night fell and the stars began to peek through the twilight, Oliver felt a resolve stirring within him. This garden, with all its wonders and inhabitants, was now under his watch. He would protect it, learn from it, and most of all, he would keep the magic alive for everyone who, like him, believed in the enchantment of the world. As Oliver spent more days in the enchanted garden, learning its secrets and forming bonds with its magical inhabitants, a change began to creep over the garden. A change that started subtly, but soon became impossible to ignore. One morning, as the first light of dawn painted the sky in hues of peach and lavender, Oliver noticed that the usually vibrant foxglove folk looked droopy and pale. "What's wrong?" he asked Flix, who seemed less chirpy than usual. "It's the blight," Flix murmured, her voice a soft echo of its former self. "It started at the far end of the garden, where the shadows linger longest. It's spreading, and we don't know how to stop it." Oliver followed Flix to the affected area. The sight that met his eyes was heart-wrenching. The once lush and vibrant flora now appeared sapped of life, their colors faded to dull grays and browns. The air, which had always been filled with the fragrance of blooming flowers and aromatic leaves, now held a faintly acrid scent. "The heart of the garden," Eldrin the wise oak intoned when Oliver sought his counsel. "It is the source of all magic here, and it is weakening. If we do not act, the entire garden will perish." "But what can we do?" Oliver asked, his voice tinged with desperation. "The heart is a gem, buried deep within the oldest part of the garden," Eldrin explained. "It needs to be recharged with the pure essence of belief and joy, elements only a true guardian can provide." Thus began Oliver's quest. It was not just a quest to save a garden, but to save a world that had become as dear to him as his own. Oliver's journey was fraught with challenges. The blight seemed almost sentient, throwing obstacles in his path. Thorns sprang from the ground, trying to ensnare him. Illusions clouded his vision, leading him astray. But Oliver pressed on, driven by a resolve that was bolstered by the support of his magical friends. Along the way, he encountered creatures he had never seen before, guardians of the deeper magic of the garden. There was the salamander of the flame, a creature of fire living in the heart of a great willow, whose leaves burned an eternal gold. The salamander taught Oliver about courage and resilience. In a grove, veiled by the mists of time, he met the mirror moths, delicate creatures, whose wings reflected one's truest self. They taught him the importance of self-belief and honesty. Finally, after what seemed like an eternity wandering through the thickening blight, Oliver arrived at the ancient part of the garden. Here, the air was still vibrant, pulsing with the untouched magic of the old world. Guided by the whispers of the wind and the guidance of his friends, Oliver found the heart, a glowing gem the size of a cricket ball, its facets pulsating weakly. With trembling hands, he reached out to the heart. As he touched it, a surge of warmth flooded through him, a mixture of all the joy, wonder, and belief he had felt since entering the garden. The gem's glow intensified, its light spreading outward, bathing the blighted garden in its radiant energy. Slowly, the garden began to heal. The colors returned, the air cleared, and the plants and creatures rejuvenated. The blight receded, driven back by the power of the restored heart. The garden was saved, and with it, the magic that it harbored. Oliver had proven himself as the guardian of the enchanted garden, not just through his bravery, but through his belief in the magic and wonder of the world. A belief so strong that it had revived the heart of a world on the brink of decay. Oliver stood before the vast hedge maze known as the Labyrinth of Whispers. It was said that the hedges shifted with the wind, never the same path twice. The air was thick with the scent of rosemary and thyme, which grew abundantly along the twisted paths. As Oliver stepped forward, the hedges seemed to lean in, as if curious about this new visitor. The maze tested Oliver's memory and sense of direction. Whispering voices floated through the air, murmuring hints and secrets. Some led him closer to the center, while others tempted him further away. It was a dance of intuition and trust, and Oliver learned to listen not just with his ears, but with his heart. Beyond the maze lay the stone circle, ancient and weathered, standing as guardians of forgotten lore. As Oliver approached, the stones began to murmur. The largest stone spoke a riddle, its voice a deep echo from the past. "I speak without a mouth and hear without ears. I have no body, but I come alive with wind." What am I? Oliver pondered the question, his mind racing through possibilities. The answer came to him as a gentle breeze rustled the leaves around him. "You are an echo," he replied confidently. The stones rumbled in approval, parting slightly to allow him passage. Each stone then whispered its own wisdom to Oliver, tales of resilience, the importance of listening, and the strength found in silence. These lessons imbued Oliver with a deeper understanding of patience and the value of reflection. Deeper into the enchanted garden, in a grove lit by fireflies, dwelt the guardians of the heart. These were not fearsome beasts, but gentle creatures, each a custodian of the garden's magic. A dragonfly with wings of shimmering glass approached Oliver. Her name was Seraphina, and her task was to assess the purity of intent of any who sought the heart. Seraphina led Oliver to a clear pond where he was asked to look into the water and describe what he saw. Oliver saw himself, but not as he was. In the pond, he was braver, kinder, more compassionate. Seraphina explained, "The heart reflects who you can be, not just who you are." Oliver learned that courage was not the absence of fear, but the decision to act despite it. He also learned that compassion was seeing the reflection of oneself in others and acting with kindness and understanding. The final challenge was the most daunting. Oliver arrived at a clearing where the air thrummed with power. Here, the heart of the garden was protected by a spectral phoenix named Ashara. To reach the heart, Oliver had to face Ashara in a challenge of wills. Ashara's challenge was simple yet profound. Oliver must share his greatest fear and his deepest wish. This act of vulnerability was the ultimate test of his courage. Oliver confessed his fear of failure and his wish to make a lasting difference in the world. Impressed by his honesty and bravery, Ashara granted Oliver access to the heart. As he approached, the heart's glow intensified, responding to the purity of his intentions. Oliver's journey through the enchanted garden had prepared him for this final quest, to find and restore the heart of the garden. With each step deeper into the mystical heartland, the flora and fauna grew more exotic, and the air vibrated with raw magical energy. The colors around him were more vivid, and the sounds of the garden carried a musical quality that seemed to resonate directly with his soul. As he ventured deeper, the path became enveloped in a mist that shimmered with specks of luminescence. The trail led him to the Vale of Mists, a sacred place said to be the oldest part of the garden, where the veil between the magical and the mortal world was thinnest. In the center of the vale stood an ancient willow, its branches sweeping the ground with an air of solemnity and grace. Beneath the willow, grazing quietly on the luminescent moss, was the creature Oliver had heard of in the oldest tales of the garden, a majestic unicorn named Aelwyn, whose fur shimmered with the light of 1,000 stars. Elwyn raised her head as Oliver approached, her eyes deep pools of wisdom. "You have come far, young guardian," she spoke, her voice echoing like a melody in his mind. "But the true test lies ahead. To reach the heart, you must prove your purity and dedication." Aelwyn led Oliver to a crystal-clear pool, fed by a waterfall that glittered even in the dim light of the twilight. "Look into the waters, Oliver. What you see will determine your readiness to hold the heart." Oliver peered into the pool. Instead of his reflection, he saw scenes from his journey. Each challenge he had faced, each lesson he had learned, and every fear he had overcome. The images swirled, faster and faster, until they abruptly stopped on a single image. Oliver, offering his hand to help up a fallen foxglove folk. "You have shown kindness, courage, and resilience," Aelwyn said. "But one test remains. Bring forth the deepest desire of your heart," Aelwyn instructed. Oliver closed his eyes, reaching deep into his soul. When he opened them, he held out his hands, and in them shimmered a faint image of the garden, thriving and vibrant, filled with laughter and joy. Aelwyn nodded, a glint of approval in her eyes. "You have proven your heart true." With a graceful stride, she led him to a hidden alcove where the heart of the garden lay. It was a crystal larger than any Oliver had ever seen, pulsating with a soft light but dimmed from the blight. Chapter 5. Restoration of the Garden. Aelwyn guided Oliver on how to restore the heart. "Place your hands upon the crystal, and with all the belief and joy you possess, wish for the garden's renewal." As Oliver placed his hands on the heart, warmth spread through his body. He felt his joy, his belief, and his dreams flowing through him into the heart. The crystal began to glow brighter, its light expanding, washing over the garden, dispelling the blight, restoring life and color to the world around them. Flowers, bloomed instantaneously. Trees straightened and sprouted new leaves, and the air filled with the buzzing of bees and the songs of birds. The magic of the garden surged, stronger and more vibrant than ever before. As the garden came alive around him, Aylwin spoke. "You have done well, Oliver. The heart is restored, and with it, the garden's magic. You are truly its guardian, now." Overwhelmed with joy and a sense of accomplishment, Oliver looked around at the restored beauty of the garden. He had not just saved a magical world, he had become part of its legacy, a guardian whose story would be whispered by the winds and celebrated by the blooms. As the first rays of dawn broke over the newly restored garden, casting long shadows and bathing the lush greenery in a soft golden light, Oliver stood at the edge of the veil of mists, contemplating the journey that had brought him to this moment. Aylwin, the majestic unicorn, approached him, her hooves silent on the mossy earth. "The garden is whole once more thanks to you, Oliver. You have the choice now," Aylwin began, her voice serene yet carrying an undercurrent of solemnity. "You may choose to stay here in the enchanted garden and continue to watch over its magic as its guardian. Or you may return to your world, to your family and friends with the knowledge and joy you have gained." Oliver listened, feeling the weight of her words. He looked back at the garden, its beauty more vibrant than he had ever seen, its magic palpable in the air like a living, breathing thing. He thought of his family, his school, and his old life, so mundane in comparison but still his own. "I think my place is back home," Oliver said finally, his voice steady, despite the turmoil of emotions within him. "The garden taught me so much about magic, about courage, and about myself. I want to share that with the world outside, to bring a little bit of this magic back with me." Aylwin nodded, her eyes glinting with pride. "Very well, Oliver. Your heart has grown wise." As Oliver prepared to leave, the creatures of the garden gathered to bid him farewell. The foxglove folk, the wise old oak eldrin, the playful garden, fairies, and even Seraphina the dragonfly came to see him off. Each of them offered him a gift, small tokens of the garden's magic. Flix, the boldest of the foxglove folk, stepped forward with a shy smile. "We can't let you go back empty-handed, can we?" She handed Oliver a small pouch filled with seeds. "These are no ordinary seeds. Plant them in your world. They carry the essence of the garden's magic." Eldrin bestowed upon Oliver a small, beautifully carved wooden flute. "Play this and remember us," the old oak said. "Its music will remind you of the lessons and the laughter you shared here." The fairies gave him a vial of dew from the first morning of the garden's restoration. "A drop of this will make any plant in your world flourish," they chirped happily. And from Aylwin, Oliver received a silver pendant shaped like a unicorn's horn. "Wear this, and remember that you are always a part of this garden, and its magic is always a part of you," she said. With a heart full of mixed emotions, Oliver walked back through the garden, past the whispering trees and the blooming flowers, to the gate where his journey had begun. As he stepped through the gate, the enchanted garden faded behind him, leaving him standing in the ordinary world once again. He was home, but he was not the same boy who had left. He carried with him the magic and wisdom of the garden, and a resolve to make his own world a little more magical. Oliver wasted no time. He planted the magic seeds in his backyard, under the watchful eyes of his astonished family. As the days passed, the plants grew, vibrant and unusual, drawing curious glances and wonder from neighbors and friends. Oliver told his story to anyone who would listen, spreading the tales of the enchanted garden. The seeds he planted blossomed into spectacular flowers that sparkled under the sun, a visible sign of the magic that exists just beyond what we can see. As years passed, Oliver's garden became a local wonder, a small echo of the enchanted garden. Children came to hear his stories and to see the magic for themselves, and in their laughter and joy, Oliver knew he had made the right choice. He kept the silver pendant close, a reminder of his duties as a guardian, not just of the enchanted garden but of all magical places, hidden just out of sight but always within reach for those who believe. Oliver stood in his transformed backyard, now a bustling hub of magic and wonder. As he watered the shimmering plants, each droplet glistening like a tiny star, he reflected on how much he had changed. The garden behind his house was small compared to the vastness of the enchanted garden, yet it thrummed with a similar magic, a testament to the seeds he had planted and nurtured. Neighbors and friends, adults and children alike, visited often, drawn by the stories of Oliver's adventures and the visible proof of magic in the blooming wonders of his garden. Through these interactions, Oliver realized that his journey had not only transformed him, but also subtly influenced his community. People began to talk more about nature, to respect the green spaces around them, and to plant more gardens of their own. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows and bathing his magical garden in a warm, golden light, Oliver gathered a group of local children around him. He shared tales of Eldrin the wise oak, the playful foxglove folk, and Elwyn the majestic unicorn. With each story, he emphasized the lessons he had learned: the courage to explore, the joy of discovery, and the responsibility to protect. But the greatest lesson, Oliver said, pausing to look each child in the eye, is that magic is real. It's all around us in every leaf and every breeze. We just need to keep our curiosity alive and care for our world, and the magic will show itself. The children listened, wide-eyed, hanging on his every word. Oliver handed out small packets of seeds from his garden, encouraging each child to plant their own and see what magic they could grow. As weeks turned into months and months into years, Oliver's efforts to share his love for the natural world grew. He started local initiatives to create more green spaces, organized nature walks for schools, and participated in community-driven environmental efforts. His garden became a symbol of community and ecological awareness, a place where the urban met the magical, encouraging a harmonious coexistence. The story of Oliver and the enchanted garden spread far beyond his small town, inspiring others to look closer at the world around them. Newspapers and online blogs featured his magical garden, highlighting the impact one child's belief in magic had on revitalizing community engagement with nature. In the twilight of a particularly lush summer, as fireflies danced around his garden, Oliver looked around at the faces of the community gathered in his magical garden. A sense of fulfillment filled him. He had brought back more than just stories and magical seeds from the enchanted garden. He had brought back a new way of seeing the world. The adventure in the enchanted garden taught Oliver, and through him, his community, that the magic of nature is infinite and ever-present. It underscored the importance of curiosity, the necessity of care, and the power of an individual to inspire change. "Let's all be guardians of our world," Oliver would say, his eyes sparkling with the same wonder he had as a child when he first stepped through that ancient ivy-covered gate. For every garden, enchanted or not, holds the magic of growth and the potential for discovery. We just need to nurture it. Years had passed since Oliver first discovered the enchanted garden and became its guardian. The seeds he had shared and planted had blossomed into a miraculous spectacle that transformed not only his own backyard, but many others in the town. These gardens became small echoes of the enchanted garden, brimming with vibrant colors and a touch of magic. Spread of the gardens. Oliver's initiative to distribute the magical seeds had inspired many in his town to nurture their own patches of land. Children who had once listened to his stories were now young adults, creating their own gardens that retained the sparkle of the enchanted realm. These gardens were not hidden behind ancient gates, but were open for all to see and enjoy, weaving a network of green, magical spaces across the community. As these gardens flourished, they began to attract new kinds of visitors, not just bees and butterflies, but creatures of magic that had never before been seen outside the enchanted garden. Ethereal sprites and tiny guardians of the flora whispered among the leaves, their presence a testament to the spreading magic. People reported seeing shimmering lights and feeling sudden gusts of joyous laughter when passing these new magical gardens, especially on moonlit nights. These phenomena, though small and subtle, were clear signs that the world was changing, becoming a little more enchanted day by day. Now an adult, Oliver often walked through the community, Observing the changes with a proud yet humble heart, he saw how the seeds he had planted both literally and metaphorically had grown into something far greater than he had ever imagined. It was not just about the plants and the mystical creatures. It was about the ideas and dreams that had taken root in people's minds. One evening, while walking through a particularly lush garden that had once been a barren patch of land, Oliver met a young girl who reminded him of himself. She was curious, her eyes filled with wonder as she tended to a small plant glowing softly under the twilight sky. "You see, it's real," she said to him, as if sharing a grand secret. "The magic. It's all real." Oliver smiled, his heart swelling with an indescribable mixture of nostalgia and hope. "Yes, it is," he agreed, kneeling beside her. "And it grows, spreads and thrives with care and belief, just like us." As the girl returned to her gardening, Oliver stood and took a moment to look around. The magical seeds he had once planted as a child had ignited a spark that would continue to grow, fueled by new generations of guardians who believed in the magic of the natural world. The story of the Enchanted Garden was no longer just a story. It was a living, breathing part of the world, forever expanding and enchanting all who believed in its magic. Oliver knew then that his journey had truly made a difference, not just in his own life, but in the fabric of the world itself. The magic was alive, and it was here to stay, carried forward by the hearts and hands of those who cherished and nurtured it. As the narrative closes, the reader is left with the assurance that the magic of the garden is not confined to the pages of a story or the boundaries of a hidden world. It is a part of every garden, every believer, and every act of kindness and care toward our world. Oliver's legacy is a reminder that magic is real and potent, especially when shared and spread with love and joy.